Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is how to set up your account in Breathe. Once you've created your account as a new customer, you should see this screen. And the first thing we go and do is go and set up our logo. So if you go into settings and details, you'll see you can load a logo here. So I'm just going to do that, edit account, find your logo. It might ask you to fill in your address there and then scroll down and save that, and you'll see your logo will appear at the top of the screen. Going back into settings, configure settings down here, you're going to stay in here for quite a while. We're also going to go in and configure our modules. Breathe has a number of paid for modules, but it also has lots of included modules, some of which you might or might not be using. We tend to take some of these off. If you're not using DBS, I would click it off. You may or may not want to have things like discipline grievance set up. You may not be using the payslip import, for example. So tick off those that you don't think you're going to use. You might want to use the payroll export if you want to download data from Breathe. Keep the change logs on. Keep onboarding tasks on. If you've got Xero, you might want to integrate your account there. So there you go, you've enabled your modules. What we do then is we go in and we set up our pick lists. So this is for certain areas of the system where you're going to want to be able to choose different pick lists for example, leave types. In here, we tend to make some of these not be able to be selected by the employer. It depends how much you want to control this. So for example, adoption leave, you might want that to be controlled by an administrator or an HR person. Same with charity days. Depends how open you want to be about letting people just book these things. Obviously, it will go across their manager to approve, but some of them you might want to keep controlled more centrally. So I'm just taking off some of these. Always take off unauthorised leave. I don't think anyone should be able to book themselves on unauthorised leave. Unpaid leave also, you may want a bit more control around that if that's having to go across to your payroll. There's various pick lists in here. Sickness types, we don't tend to change these, but if you have got some additional ones that you want to put in, you can just create it here. And there's one that we've used in the past. There we go. So we can add that in. Departments, if you've got different departments, you may well want to get rid of some of these if you don't have customer service, for example, and you might want to add something else in, like operations, for example. And then you can load your people into the departments. Divisions, we don't tend to use, but if you do have different divisions in the business, you can set those up there. I'm just going to scroll down. It's a similar thing on these. The ones we do tend to add to, gender. If you're going to capture this through the system, we just tend to add in, just having a little think, we just tend to add in an option of prefer not to say on your gender, or if you want to be a bit more inclusive and have different gender types, then obviously you could use the plus button to add those into there. Similar for these notice periods, there's quite a lot of notice periods on here. Again, I tend to go in and delete those that you're unlikely to have, such as 24 months, even 12 months, 1.5 months, quite odd. So I just tend to take off those funny ones that you may be using, but probably unlikely. If you've got additional payment types, different types of bonus or commission or allowances, that kind of thing, you can add those in there. One-to-one types is quite nice to customize that if you've got particular language that you use for one-to-ones, or if you have, a process of something that's different to these types. You've got your probation review in there. but obviously you can add them using the plus. So there you go, you've set up your pick lists. At that point, we usually come down here and we have a look at what do you want your HR users to see. We normally disable the welcome page. You can exclude salary from the missing data report if you're not holding salaries within the system. Some people don't like using the Bradford factor, so you can switch that off if you're not going to be using that, although it is quite a helpful tool from a reporting point of view. Again, line managers, this is where you're wanting to decide what level of access you're giving your managers. Usually they do see documents. You want them to manage all types of leave and sickness. I would usually suggest you switch all of those on. Training, one-to-ones, and objectives. Usually want all of those on. Depends if you're going to use deliverables. You don't have to use deliverables. Job details you probably want to control a little bit more, so we're just going to allow them to see it but not maybe delete it or change it. Pay is a good one to think about. Are your managers going to have access to pay? I would usually say if they can, yes. Emergency contacts I wouldn't. I would normally keep that to 1 or 2 people in the business who can access that bit more personal. Same with medical facts, wouldn't normally give that to line managers or personal history. Equipment, yes, you might want them to manage the equipment if they're issuing people with IT equipment when they join, etc. ID documents, no, I would normally keep that more central. And onboarding tasks, you probably want them to see that. And then do you want them to see the level below their direct reports? I wouldn't normally switch on the bank details for line managers, so update that so they've got their visibility. Often if a manager says I can't see something that they think they should be seeing, it's in there that you need to go and have a quick look. And then the same with your people. I don't see why people shouldn't see their own pay, so I always do switch that on. You might want them to be able to directly enter their own training. You may not. It depends, again, on your business. And you need to decide whether you're using the toil, time off and lieu function. If you're not, then click that one off. Just update those settings. Once you've done that, you've set up most of the basic functionality. You might just want to check what your holiday year is. Obviously, the standard's January to December, but quite often there might be April to March or July to June. So make sure you've got that set up. Then you're into setting up your work pattern. So the system will have set you a default standard working week for 37.5 hours. If that's not your default, you can set up a new one here. If you're working 40 hours a week, for example, or perhaps, 8. I'm going to just pop in 8 hours a day. Doesn't usually include a lunch break, which is normally unpaid, not always, but just check that you're getting the right numbers in there. Obviously, if you've got any part-timers, you'll want to put in, for example, there, we came up with a 4-day week. So if they're only doing 4 days, you're just going to put them in for that. 8 hours a day over the 4 days. You'll then be able to allocate these to people once you've got your people in the system. Same with the work holiday allowances. You're set up with a standard 20 days. This business, I'm going to say, a little bit more generous than that. We're going to go with 25. Decide if you're going to allow people to carry over. Often 5 days. Perhaps you've got a limit, they need to use it within 3 months. We're just going to say they're going to allow it to roll over for the whole year. So there you've set up your holiday allowance, and obviously you're going to want to set up any part-timers and decide whether or not you're including the bank holidays or whether you're letting the system allocate the bank holidays. In this case, we're going to include it. So this person's going to get 26.5 days, including their bank holidays, and they can carry over a week in the same way. So we've got that set up now. So you'd go in and you would input all of your different work patterns and holiday allowances into those 2 sections. You also want to think about whether you're going to switch on 2-factor authentication. whether you're going to do that for everyone or just for people who've got a lot of data, such as line managers, HR users and finance users. So you can just toggle it on or off here. If you want to learn more about two-factor authentication, you can go into the help section down here in the knowledge base, which is excellent, and you can type anything into the knowledge base. So if you type in there two-factor authentication, it'll come up and that will tell you how to set it up, give you instructions on what to send out to your team, etc. And that is you pretty much set up. So you've done the basic setup of your system. The next thing is to get your people into the system, and I'll be just showing you how to do that in just a second.